Imagine this, the Egyptian pyramids were still rising, the cities of Sumer were beginning to shape some of humanity's earliest history. And yet, far away, on the dry, quiet coast of ancient Peru, another civilization was already building massive stone cities of its own. So why does almost no one talk about them? How did one of the oldest civilizations in the Americas end up nearly forgotten? And perhaps, most strangely of all, they built monumental cities. They raised huge stepped platforms that looked almost like pyramids. They created ceremonial plazas and sacred spaces, but they left behind no clear evidence of great wars and no readable, written language. Today, we know this civilization as Norte Chico, or the Caral soup civilization. It existed roughly between 3000 and 1800 BC along the central coast of what is now Peru. UNESCO recognizes Caral soup as one of the oldest centers of civilization in the Americas. In other words, Caral is not just important to the history of Peru, it may represent one of the earliest great chapters in the story of the entire American continent. Its most famous city was Caral. Today, Caral sits in a dry, dusty valley, quiet and almost empty. But thousands of years ago, this was no ordinary settlement. It was a major urban center filled with large plazas, ceremonial buildings, stepped platforms, and pyramid-like structures. And that is where the mystery begins. If these people were capable of building something so large, so organized, and so advanced, this early in history, why is their name not spoken as often as Egypt, Sumer, or the Maya? Who were they? Really, who led them? And why did they disappear from history? One of the most fascinating things about Norte Chico is how different it seems from the usual image of an ancient civilization. When we think of early civilizations, we usually imagine kings, armies, wars, fortresses, and conquest, but Caral does not seem to fit that pattern. There is very little evidence of large-scale warfare, no massive defensive walls, no powerful fortress systems, no weapon-filled royal graves. It almost feels as though this city was not ruled through fear, but through something else. Maybe that something was religion. Maybe it was ritual. Maybe these enormous structures were built not simply because a ruler commanded them, but because people were united by shared belief. The great plazas and ceremonial spaces at the heart of Caral seem to suggest exactly that. This may not have been a city built only for daily life. It may have been a place for gathering, worship, trade, and social unity, a place where people came together around a common purpose, and that makes it even more mysterious, because so many civilizations in history rose through military power, but Norte Chico may have risen without it. Its economy was just as remarkable. These people lived in one of the harshest environments imaginable, the dry coastal region of Peru, and yet they managed to create an effective system that connected the inland valleys. With the coast, cotton was grown inland. Fish were caught along the shore. The cotton was used to make fishing nets, and the fish were carried back inland. It was a simple but powerful exchange system, one that allowed life to flourish in a place that looked almost like a desert. But there is another mystery here. Did they have some kind of writing system? At Caral, archaeologists found knotted strings that resemble the quipu later used by the Inca. Quipu was a system of cords and knots used to record information and keep accounts. If the people of Caral were already using an early form of that system, then the tradition of recording knowledge in the Andes may be far older than anyone once imagined. But here is the problem. We still cannot truly hear their voice. We cannot read their words. We do not know the names of their rulers. We do not fully know which gods they worshipped. We do not know how they told their own story. All we have are stones, plazas, buried objects, and silent ruins. It is as if this civilization still stands before us, but refuses to speak. And then there are the musical instruments. Archaeologists discovered flutes, made from the bones of condors and pelicans, instruments believed to have been used in ceremonies. That discovery tells us something important. Caral was not just a place of architecture. It was a place of sound, of ritual, of belief. You can almost imagine it, night falling over the valley, people gathering in the plazas, wind moving through the dry air, and the haunting sound of bone flutes rising into the darkness. But like so many ancient worlds, this one also faded. After around 1800 BC, Caral and other Norte Chico centers began to decline. Why? That part is still debated. Some researchers believe climate change played a major role. Droughts, floods, and environmental instability. If the rivers shifted, if agricultural production weakened, if coastal resources became unreliable, then the very foundation of this civilization may have started to break apart. In other words, perhaps Norte Chico was not destroyed by an invading army, but by nature itself. And yet, even that may not be the full end of the story. Some recent research suggests that the cultural traditions of Caral may have continued elsewhere. Later sites, such as PastEcho, hint that this civilization may not have truly vanished at all. Maybe Norte Chico did not disappear. Maybe it simply moved, maybe it changed, maybe it lost its name, but not its legacy. And thousands of years later, archaeologists began to uncover its silent stones and piece its story back together. So when we look at Caral today, we are not just looking at ruins. We are looking at a forgotten beginning, one of the earliest urban societies in the Americas, a civilization that may have risen without war, a people who may have preserved knowledge without writing, a culture that history overlooked for far too long. Maybe history tends to remember the loudest empires, the bloodiest wars, the most dramatic conquests. But in the silent valleys of Peru, another kind of story was waiting, a quieter one, a stranger one, a story that forces us to ask a deeper question. If a civilization could build great cities, organize society, and endure for centuries without becoming a war-driven empire, then have we truly understood what power meant in the ancient world? Norte Chico leaves us with that question and with this reminder. Sometimes the greatest mysteries in history are hidden inside the quietest ruins.